In our last episode, we introduced the concept of precedent, one of the most powerful tools in legal writing. Today, we're picking up where we left off, but we're diving even deeper. If precedent is the blueprint for legal arguments, this episode is about fine-tuning the details and learning how to master its more nuanced aspects. We'll explore advanced strategies like distinguishing holding from dicta, understanding horizontal versus vertical precedent, and ensuring the cases you rely on are still good law through Shepardizing. So whether this is a refresher or a new learning opportunity, let's take your legal writing to the next level. Think of precedent as the foundation of consistency in the legal system. Every court decision doesn't just resolve one case, it creates a framework for future cases to follow. Precedent allows courts to say, here's how we handled this before, and here's why we'll handle it the same now. But it's more than just a rule book, it's a living, dynamic tool that adapts as societal norms and legal interpretations evolve. Mandatory or binding authority acts as court's definitive instruction manual. Courts must follow it if it comes from a higher court within the same jurisdiction. For example, a Supreme Court ruling sets the ultimate precedent, binding on all courts in the country. But persuasive authority, while not mandatory, can be a powerful ally. It allows you to incorporate well-reasoned arguments from other jurisdictions or lower courts to strengthen your case. The real challenge comes when binding authority seems to conflict with persuasive insights. In these situations, your ability to balance both effectively can mean the difference between a solid argument and a groundbreaking one. In legal writing, start with binding precedent. It's the strongest foundation of your argument. If binding precedent doesn't exist, look to persuasive authority to add depth and credibility. But remember, treating persuasive authority like it's binding is a rookie mistake that will undermine your argument. To understand why some precedents are binding and why others aren't, let's talk about the court hierarchy. Picture it as a pyramid. At the top sits the U.S. Supreme Court, the ultimate authority on federal law and constitutional issues. Their ruling bind all other courts in the country. Below the Supreme Court are the 13th Circuit Court of Appeals, whose decisions are binding within their circuits, but only persuasive for courts outside of them. At the base are the district courts, where federal cases originate. Their rulings are binding only for the specific case at hand and persuasive for others. State court systems mirror the structure with trial courts at the bottom, appellate courts in the middle, and a state Supreme Court at the top. If you're writing a legal argument, knowing this hierarchy ensures you're citing the most relevant precedent for your case. Always check the court level and jurisdiction of the precedent you're citing. A ruling from the Texas Supreme Court will bind all Texas courts on state law, but it's just persuasive in California. Knowing the hierarchy ensures your argument stands on firm legal ground. Stare decisis, Latin for to stand by things decided, is the principle that ensures consistency and predictability in the legal system. It's the reason courts generally follow established precedent. But precedent isn't set in stone. When societal values shift, courts sometimes overturn past decisions. Take Brown versus Board of Education, which famously overturned Plessy v. Ferguson and marked a turning point in the fight against segregation. Most recently, cases like Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization have revisited and overturned decades of precedent. These examples show how precedent evolves while still serving as a cornerstone of fairness in the law. Stare decisis gives your arguments predictability and legitimacy. When you cite precedent, you're building on a system designed to uphold fairness, making your argument more credible and persuasive. When citing precedent, it's critical to distinguish between holding and dicta. The holding is the court's actual decision on the legal issue at hand. It's binding precedent. Dicta, by contrast, are side comments or observations that aren't essential to the decision. While dicta can provide helpful context, they aren't binding. For example, if a court's ruling contains a hypothetical discussion about future cases, that's dicta. It's persuasive at best. Always focus on the holding when citing a case to ensure your argument stands on solid legal ground. Dicta can add context or flavor, but it won't carry the same weight. Misinterpreting dicta as holding is a common mistake that can weaken your argument. Jurisdiction determines whether precedent is binding or persuasive. Geographic jurisdiction refers to the area where a court has authority. While subject matter jurisdiction pertains to the type of cases a court can hear, a Texas court must follow Texas Supreme Court rulings. But a California ruling is only persuasive in Texas. Double-check the jurisdiction of the cases you're citing. Using precedent from outside your jurisdiction might be persuasive, but it won't have the same authority as binding precedent within your jurisdiction. Vertical precedent comes from higher courts, and it must be followed by lower courts in the same jurisdiction. It's the backbone of binding authority. Horizontal precedent, on the other hand, involves courts following their own previous decisions or those of courts at the same level. For instance, a federal district court might follow its own earlier ruling if the facts are similar, but it's not strictly required to do so. Understanding these nuances lets you craft arguments that leverage binding authority while strategically using horizontal precedent to support your case. Understanding these nuances helps you identify which precedents are rock solid and which are more flexible. This knowledge allows you to craft arguments that are both strategic and persuasive. Before citing a case, you need to make sure it's still good law. Shepardizing is a process of checking whether a case has been overruled, reaffirmed, or questioned in subsequent rulings. For instance, platforms like Nexus Uni or Westlaw use symbols like red flags for overruled cases or yellow flags for cases that have been questioned. Imagine citing a case in your argument only to discover that it's been overturned. Shepardizing protects you from this embarrassment, ensuring every case you rely on is valid and strengthening your argument. Even seasoned legal researchers can fall into traps when dealing with precedent. Avoid these common pitfalls. 1. Misinterpreting dicta as holding. 2. Citing outdated or overruled precedent. Always Shepardize. 3. Confusing persuasive authority with binding authority. By steering clear of these mistakes, you'll ensure your arguments are not just solid, but airtight. Mastering precedent is essential for any legal writer. It's not just about knowing the law, it's about understanding how to apply it effectively. By recognizing the difference between binding and persuasive authority, focusing on holdings over dicta, and ensuring your cases are still good law, you can build arguments that are credible, persuasive, and rooted in the strength of precedent. This knowledge isn't just a tool, it's the foundation of effective legal advocacy and a cornerstone of justice. Armed with these skills, you'll be ready to tackle any legal challenge with confidence.